Hello, everyone. This is Garrett.
This is Jabin.
I'm Geoffery. I'm a narrative designer and game designer based in Los Angeles, and I've written for Capcom, Ubisoft, Square Enix, and for indie studios around the world.
Absolutely, and we are super happy to have you on our podcast today. We wanted to start branching out and getting some more guests on here, and because me and Jabin love talking, it's super fun. But ever since we had our first guest, we have noticed getting more people on here and getting more takes that are outside of just ours is so much fun, because it's kind of expanding our horizons past what we know, and then opening us up to new ideas, which we're actually going to be going over one of your ideas today, and not just one of your ideas, but one of your projects that you send out to subscribers. So we'll go ahead and let you open up. I know this is a real short intro, but I just want to get to stuff so we can start the conversation here. We'll go ahead and let you open up on your project here. Go ahead and describe to everyone what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm the game master of Adventure Snack. Adventure Snack is one of the most popular fiction newsletters on Substack, and it's interactive fiction. So I make short, choose-your-path adventure games, and I email them to my subscribers. We've got about 2,000 subscribers at this point. If you remember classic text adventure games like Zork or Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or you remember the old Choose Your Own Adventure books, I think you really dig Adventure Snack. It's like those, but short. They're like micro-sized, so you can do them on a lunch break. And I send them out twice a month, and it's completely free. And you can get it at adventuresnack.com. We do, I like to write and design in all different genres. You know, we've done sci-fi games, we've done fantasy games, even like Western games and things like that. But always with an eye towards the humor. It's always, they're usually funny, weird, absurd. As I said, ideal for, oh God, I'm in line at the bank. What am I going to do? Oh, I could play Adventure Stack. I could get in one of those real quick and have some fun. And I like to make them replayable too. So if you take different paths, you can see what you could have done in your short time, in your short adventure. So yeah, and that's at adventuresnack.com.
Shoot, I'm gonna subscribe. That's literally in my wheelhouse. You don't understand. That's stuff that I love. I love adventure games like that, and where you can like go back and replay it and see what you haven't chosen. Like I love that butterfly effect, like kind of feel to it. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I look forward to having you in our adventuring party.
Yeah, let's go. I'm down.
Yeah, those types of games have always been a very fun idea, because I mean they've been expanded on in indie games, AAA games. I mean, if you look at something like Until Dawn, kind of those butterfly effect games, where choices determine your outcome. It's so creative, and it sounds, honestly, in my opinion, it sounds a lot harder than making a lot of other games, because you have to make each ending, and you have to make each certain action that a player may choose, compared to a linear story game when it's like, oh, they're going to walk over here, a cutscene's going to play, this little story is going to be told. Is it more challenging to make a branching path story than a linear type of game?
Oh, without question. Yeah, there's no question. Part of it too is when you add complexity, you naturally are adding challenge to it, and branching paths add complexity, both by their very nature. But the more responsive the game is to player feedback, the more challenging it's going to be, probably, as a writing project. I mean, granted, like, you're talking about like AAA development. Like if I'm writing an adventure stack and it's like, 5 sentences long or whatever, even if it's branching, it's probably not going to be as difficult to write as it's probably going to be easier to write than a 20-hour linear narrative experience. But on the whole, yeah, branching makes things more difficult. And to how much player input there is will also add complexity, right? So if it's like, if I can choose, if it's like a traditional like interactive fiction sort of experience where I may be choosing paths in the woods, right? And those paths in the woods lead me to different outcomes. That may not be as challenging as something that's taking, say, my dialogue into account, like my personality is trying to like determine my personality. And it's like a social simulator where it's trying to then, where I might get like a choice of games are very commonly do this, where, it's basically like a personality quiz and your dialogue is determining like what happens to you in a social setting. That could be significantly more difficult to write. So yeah, I don't know. It ranges. It definitely ranges, but in general, yes, I would say they're more complex for sure.
I like how you mentioned the like it kind of gives you like a personality test all the way through, because one thing that comes in my head, actually probably one of my favorite I guess you could say butterfly effect games, or pick your own path games in terms of like big, it's called Detroit Become Human, because I feel like all the like every little single choice can drastically change each character that you're playing, because you play three people at a time, which is like insane to me in my brain. But like with like Life is Strange, it does it well. But I feel like Detroit Become Human, it's the situations are more drastic, and I think there was over like 100 endings to that, but you never know where your character is going to end up, since there's so many endings like that. But it's only like that because of your dialogue and how you interact with other characters in the game. And that's one thing that it really like pops out to me too. So it's kind of cool that you from a designing point, like you look at it and be like, that's how they planned that out. That's how I'm gonna plan that out. So yeah, it's kind of crazy seeing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I some of those games, like and this is kind of a dumb example, but some of the games that I used to love as a kid was the I don't know if you guys ever played the Henry Stickmin games.
Oh my goodness,
little flash games.
That's been so long. Yeah.
So basically what those games were,
was that like were they at Newgrounds? Like
yes.
I definitely remember. I definitely know that era of. I don't know those games specifically, but one of my first jobs as a designer was working for a Flash animation website and Flash game website, and so I
that's awesome.
I remember that era of Newgrounds, Icebox, all those ones for sure. So
yeah, those.
Sorry to interrupt. Tell me about those. Tell me about the Harry Stickmin games.
You're good. So those were some of my favorite games as a kid, because the whole story, it was actually a cohesive story along 4 different games, I believe. And it was a story about this guy who, I think he got framed for something and then he got put in jail. You had to escape from jail. That was the first game. Second game, he actually becomes a criminal. And they're all stick figures, but the comedy is hilarious. And the point of the game is, like, take the second game, for instance, he has to break into a vault, steal a diamond, and get out. The thing is, there's pop culture references all throughout the game. Like, in one instance, you have a choice to climb the wall with sticky gloves, grapple up the wall, or use a portal gun from the Half-Life series. Or from Portal, not Half-Life. I'm going to get roasted for that in the comments.
Yeah, you really are, though.
That just slipped out. So there's different choices like that. And I mean, most of them were kind of gag choices. So if you picked it, it would just be like a funny cutscene and you'd be like, oh, well, you got to pick the right choice. So choice games, that was like my first introduction to, oh, there could be multiple paths to this. Because the later games ended up doing that. And so that has made me appreciate games where you can almost build your own story. Although I appreciate it, but it scares me a little bit because I'm always scared that I'm going to get one of my characters killed, that one of them's going to go off the path, one of them's going to turn evil.
Well, that's the fun of it. That's the fun of it, because you have to treat it like well, if you want your characters to live, of course, you kind of have to treat them like your own baby, or how like, hey, what I do in this situation, and it kind of cuts the middleman of like, how you're watching a movie and you're like, why does she keep tripping? Like, if I would have done, I would have done it. And now you have quick time events where it's like, oh shoot, hold on, don't do it, I'm gonna die. So it gives you that option, because the middleman is like, okay, let's put you in the story now, since you're
Yeah.
talking all that crap. Here you go. That's how I look at it, to where it's like, how would I be in that situation? And that's what, and it scares me too, but it's so enticing, just to see like where you'll end up and all the places you'll end up. So I think that's the fun of it, just the fear of, because that's kind of just the fear of the unknown too. Like, you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know what situation you're going to come up with, but you have to be prepared somehow.
Yeah. So
I
are there
think,
different sorry, I was going to ask, are there different stories like that in your game, to where like there are certain paths where if someone goes down it, it's like, oh, that's not good.
I try with Adventure. So Adventure Snack, it's a series of games. So they're like little micro games. So every one is different. So as opposed to it being like one big project. In some of the games you can die, but not all of them. But I try to make it so that even in death, it's like it's fun. Like I think that's where I think that's the only thing I mind. I don't mind dying in a game. I just want my death to be fun, and I want it to be character motivated. Like I want to be presented with like something with a reflection of my choice that feels legitimate. Like if I choose, it's like, okay, the game presents me, gonna go take the left path or the right path in the woods, right? And I decide to take the left path, and immediately a werewolf eats me. And there was like no clue that like there was a werewolf. There's no reason why choosing left would be considered bad. It wasn't. I didn't ignore a warning from a woodsman or whatever. Never take a left path in these woods. If I just do it and I just randomly die, I get frustrated. I don't consider that to be great game design. But I do like, if I like specifically like ignored my grandmother's warning and I decided, you know what, I'm going to take the left path, I'm going to live dangerously, and then I die, it's like, well, I guess I got what was coming to me for living dangerously. But it's like, it's cool because like it felt like it's good role playing, right? Because you in order for, I think, role playing to really work well, you need to be given information. You need to be given you need to be given like the tenets of the world. You need to understand like who I am and what I can do. And then like, okay, with those tools, with those rules in place, now let's see like where I fit in. Let's see what so let's see how I can affect the world. And then if it's responsive within those, the world feels responsive within those choices, it feels really good. So yeah, it's in some of them some adventure snacks you can die, but I think you'll always enjoy the branch that you get. I always try to give people it's like a fun experience to walk away from. My adventure snack games, admittedly, it's in terms of interactive fiction, it's more like a comic strip almost. I think of them more as like shorts, as like interactive shorts. So as opposed to it being like this sort of deep experience, where I'm investing, in the character. It's more like sketch comedy. It's like, oh, okay, like, oh, I'm the president's cat now. Okay, great. Let's see what I can do as the president's cat. It's like, oh, okay, I'm tracking down. Oh, Bigfoot's my landlord. Okay, well, let's see if I can hunt down Bigfoot. Find him. So it's just like fun. It's just like little like fun ideas. That it's like, okay, I'm jumping into this, like Quantum Leap or something like that. I'm jumping into this. Let's see what I can do in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we're missing with like these days too, is just it's kind of crazy, because when you talk to a lot of people who play video games, it kind of, with a lot of people that I used to talk to, it kind of like sucked the life out of them. Like it's not as enjoyable, it's not as fun, it's not as engaging. They just play it to grind, get to a certain level or something like that, and then they kind of just give up on the game and not play it for the next 5 years. So and for me, I was like that last year because obviously, Garrett and I we gamed probably too much. But with certain games, with certain games for me, there was some that I would just grind, and then you know how you like eat something too much, and then kind of like loses its flavor, and you're kind of like, well, I don't want it anymore for like the next two. That's how I was, and like I had to refine, like my enjoyment for games too, and I love what you're doing with Adventure Stack, just because it seems so, not only is it simple, because of its simplicity, you have way more room to be more innovative when it comes to the storytelling. Just because of it. Like I live for the absurdity. Like that was great. So yeah, just props to you, just keeping
Thank
it
you.
trying to keep it enjoyable, and especially for over 2,000 people.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. So no, congratulations on that, friend. That takes like real genius to do that. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
And
I think
real
I was just going to add quickly that I think games should be shorter, cheaper, and easier to develop in general. That is just my opinion. I know it is shared by some, particularly in the indie spaces. I think there's a time I appreciate the time and the effort that goes into a AAA game, and obviously they employ a lot of people, which I like. But man, I wish we could get more. It just sucks. Yeah, when it's like in order to experience a game, you have to be willing to spend upwards of 20, 30 hours into the experience. Like,
Yeah.
that's a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask of people. So yeah, I took a hard left there. Just like I ask very little. Just come on in and enjoy. Just come on in and have a good time.
Yeah.
Lose yourself for a couple minutes and enjoy it.
So, anyways, guys, sorry about that. The Discord, we figured it out. The video is a little desynced from the audio. And so if you're watching the video on YouTube, there may be a couple times, I think it's happened to all of us at least once, that the audio and video desyncs for a second or for a little while. So sorry about that. But if you're listening, you won't even notice.
It's a game, kid. We're keeping you on your toes. Can you spot the times? Put them in the comments. The time codes where where the audio desyncs from the video. Put them in. Can you catch them all?
This is
We gamified it here.
Oh, I love that so much.
That's a good Adventure Stack story.
Yes,
that's right. Yeah.
The video and the video game world and real world desync. See if you can find it. Anyway, I've loved finding out more about GameSnack and everything. That sounds. I'm absolutely going to go see what that's all about after this, because gosh, that sounds fun. But
I actually had a question for you though, because I noticed, because we looked through the mobile games that you've written and designed and everything like that, and what everything had in common. Even I'm kind of mad that they canceled the game because it actually looked tight. Especially with the Disney one that you made. And the murder mystery one that you made, I actually downloaded that. It's fantastic.
Oh, great! Oh, glad you enjoyed
And
Murder in the Alps. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that one's
people love that
great.
series.
Yeah, I love that. Just because how meaty the narrative is. Do you mostly enjoy writing more, or do you like the designing more? Because all the games, they're so heavily like story based, or like I know you put your love into that writing. You know what I mean? It's like, and I can
Thank
feel
you.
it. But I just wanted to see, like, are you more, on the writing side or on the design side? Because obviously you have talent for both, but which one do you feel, more closer to when it comes to having your creative freedom?
Thank you. That's a great question. I am traditionally a writer. I come from a linear writing background, and I fell into interactive sort of by accident. And so when I started in the industry, I was much more comfortable as a game writer. And as I move on in my career, I am finding a lot of joy in the design. And I find it's yeah, it's interesting. There's I always look for creative challenges. That's something that sort of fuels me, and it's why I love games so much. Is that there's even among game writing projects, there's always differences in terms of like what I'm being asked to do, genre differences, character differences, and all kinds of things with the studio, with the software itself. But design and learning and figuring out, pushing the boundaries of the design has become, I think, sort of a deep creative drive for me. So I guess the answer, my long-winded answer to your question is I traditionally love the writing, but lately, over the years, I have been finding it's been sort of fading up for me on the design about like, oh, how can I push the design? How can I do something really interesting
Right.
and unique and clever with the design of this that maybe people don't expect.
And I like that too, just because because coming from a fan of games like that, it makes me want to come back for more. You know what I mean? It makes me want to be like, oh, whoa, this Joffrey dude, this dude's crazy. Like, and each thing is different, and it's enticing me. What is he up to? And then that's what I saw like started doing too. Is just I started like following up what you were doing with. That's why I downloaded that game to see to see the story that you were gonna do. So yeah, I could definitely see that, and you're accomplishing everything, if in my opinion, perfectly, just because you have
Oh.
that. Because a lot of things that I feel like a lot of designers and writers, and not even just for video games, but just for like TV shows, movies, and all kinds of stuff in general, is that they're losing their flavor of creativity, and especially just because a lot of companies are like pressuring them to do like a certain way or go a certain way. But I feel like, especially when it comes to video games, and when you're able to, when you don't have anybody breathing down your back, you have way more creative freedom, and it gives you an opportunity to connect with different players and gamers who appreciate that side of of games, especially like me, just with story based games like that. So thank you for doing that. Oh my goodness, I really I want to check more of your stuff out. Like, I'm already getting a little excited about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What you bring up is interesting because I have a job currently where it's very unusual in that like I am part of a department of narrative designers and game writers that is like it's like 20 people. It is really kind of unheard of. For the most part, with the projects I work on with my client work, usually I am the narrative designer or I am the game writer or maybe there are others, but like I am given like a section of the game to do. Like with Murder in the Alps, for example, I didn't write all of Murder in the Alps, but I wrote some chapters of it, and it was basically like, yeah, you're writing this chapter of the game, and it's like several, that's like several hours of gameplay or what have you. But I'd be the sole writer, um, and it is creatively very satisfying and unusual in when you look at the way film and TV work. For example, there are always there's writers' rooms, even in movies where you see, oh, it's like two people credited. Well, really, it went through like many hands before it actually got to screen. Usually, for a major film, it's like major big budget film. They really went through like 20 writers. They just went through them one at a time. And sometimes there are writers' rooms in movies as well. So like in animated movies, particularly, they'll do punch up with like a big room of people. And so on TV, it's famously has a writer's room, So it's rare to get like sort of an auteur situation for a writer. But in games, you kind of can get that like a lot. Like there generally are a lot of gigs where you will be like the sole writer, and I really enjoy those. My current gig is very unusual in that it's a writer's room, but for the most part, yeah, games allows for that. So you do see my voice. I do feel like with those projects, even with client work like that, I can still see my voice in it. Like I can still see
I
like, oh, okay, like it is if you know my work, you can tell like, oh, okay, that is like Geoffrey doing,
Right.
what that is Geoffrey's interpretation of Woody and Buzz, from Toy Story or whatever. Which is neat, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the reason why you kind of put your own little it's like you kind of have your own little insignia, which is really tight. Like especially with how you were like write stories and stuff like that. And that's also what makes it even more creative on top of that, because it's yours. It's not anybody else's. You know what I mean? No one can replicate Jeffrey's work. So that's so cool. I appreciate stuff like that so much. That's so awesome.
Yeah. It's really cool to kind of hear the ins and outs, because I mean, as gamers, oh gosh, it made us sound like nerds. As
We are though.
yeah.
Oh, you guys are nerds. I never could have guessed.
I mean, I don't know, not the shirts or anything, but not our content over the last 3 months. But
Right.
we as people who enjoy gaming and comics and the whole deal, it's so rare that we are able to hear the inner workings of games, because we're like, oh, we just like games as we play them, and we're judging it on this, and this. But hearing the storytelling and the creative side and the design side, hearing all of that in all those intricate details adds almost a new depth to games that I feel like I honestly feel like I'm gonna start to look at games differently now, because there's so much more that goes into it. Even indie games or games that are developed by even big producers, stuff like that. There are aspects that I think a lot of people don't even pay attention to that are so vital to the game, that make it the game it is, but people don't pay any attention to it because it's not staring them in the face. And I feel like that's something that if it could change, it needs to, because that is so much work that people have put into the game that isn't being acknowledged. And I feel like it really should be. But
I agree.
Yeah.
It's a good observation. I think, in terms of where games are, like for years and years, people did not know how movies worked or how television worked. Like I remember, in the 1980s, when you started seeing like theme parks like Universal Studios and Disney's MGM, that was like a weird idea that you were like going to go like behind the scenes of the movies. Like you didn't tell those secrets it wasn't like they were like secrets like we'll keep it to our grave or whatever, but it was like you kind of had to be like part of the industry to know a lot of this stuff, and a lot of it sort of just came out over the years, and to the point where now like fans talk about things like box office numbers and stuff that didn't used to happen. That used to be like industry stuff. And I think that like the same thing will happen with video games. More and more people will start to figure out how games work or want to learn how games work. But I think we're still in sort of a relatively early period in terms of games lifespan. There's a great show though on Apple TV called Mythic Quest, which is terrific. If you haven't seen it and you are curious about the inner workings of a game studio, I'd recommend watching that show. It's very funny sitcom from the It's Always Sunny people, and it gives you sort of an inside look. And I can say like it's definitely like reflective of my experience. Like, they hit it I think pretty much out of the park.
Okay.
And but it's like a very early first attempt at really like a lot of the movies that like take place at like game companies, it's like it's a lot of bullshit. I mean, like there's that movie Free Guy.
Yes.
Where it's just absolutely terrible film, and it purports to be even the new Matrix movie, which which purports to take place at a game company. you watch it. I'm just like watching it with my wife, and I'm just telling her like that would never happen. No, it doesn't work like that. No,
Right.
nobody is given that kind of creative control or freedom. Even the creative director would have, just
Right.
like all this stuff. Whereas like I think Mythic Quest, like if you really, it's like it actually like has a good understanding of like that gaming is a team sport, even and there are auteurs in gaming. Yes, there are people with more creative control than others, but even we still call them products at the end of the day. It's the lineage is from toy manufacturing. It's not like film and TV have their roots in the theater, and in the theater, that theater is an auteur medium. It's the playwright is the king, the word is the king, right? They are group projects to be sure, but the playwright has the most creative control in terms of what actually is generally seen by an audience. Whereas, and so film and TV come from that lineage. So you have, auteur theory in film, and you'll have showrunners in TV. But even the creative directors, are still beholden to their teams. They're beholden to a lot of stakeholders generally. Less maybe with indie pride, but even with indies, I think indies are much more equivalent to like bands, like
Yeah.
than they are to like independent films that maybe have like a director or something. I think they're much more like bands where it's like, yeah, the six of us got together. One of us is the drummer, the programmer, the bassist, the artist, the singer, the director, whatever, and it's like, yeah, like this person may be the front man, but like in the end, it's like the DNA. It's like clearly like these six people came together to do this, this wild and crazy thing. So yeah, there are good resources if you're interested in learning more about it. There are good books about it. What is that book? There's like it's like Blood, Sweat, and Pixels or something like that, where it talks about the stories of indie games that are. It's a bunch of stories, and it's very good. That's a very good book. Let's see if I can Google it really quick. But it's a great. It's a great collection of stories about like working on different video games and what it's like. I bet a lot of people would be very surprised by the conditions in which their favorite games were made. It can be very tough, particularly in AAA. It can be very grueling work. I do tend to like working on mobile games for the reason that they tend to be shorter development times. It tends to be relatively easier. And yeah, you get to see the work faster as opposed to working on a AAA where it's like 5 years of development or whatever, and it's like, oh, I can finally, and you're in an NDA that whole time, so you can't tell people like what you're working on, which is one of the most frustrating aspects of it. I'm working on a game right now that I think if you knew what I was working on, you'd be like, oh my God, that's crazy.
Oh, come on, see, you can't do that to me. Oh, come on, bro.
Well, here's the good news. You
way.
may not, here's the good news. If you follow me, you may not have to wait much longer to learn what it is.
Hey, after you leave, that's about to happen. That's about to happen.
Yeah, you'll know about it. You'll know about it for sure. But that's very common. In fact, I have this pin that I think is really, really funny that somebody made. It's a pin of a contract, and it says all my best work is under NDA. And it's just like, yeah, it's like, yep, that's always true. It's always true.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Man, I've loved hearing so much about game development and everything. I do have to ask one question. So you obviously are a game writer, game designer. So do you play video games outside of creating them normally?
Oh, Loki, that's a really good question.
So my next question, I guess it's going to be two questions for you. And I mean, after you answer, me and Jay will give kind of our thoughts on it as well. What and this may take you a second to think of or not, sometimes it's different for people, but what is your favorite game of all time, and what is your favorite game genre to play? Just not like, oh, how, like, looking at this, it's so complex, but like of pure enjoyment, what's your favorite? I'm curious, because I don't know if yourself as a game writer and designer would look at it differently than someone who just plays games.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me start with the first question. Favorite game of all time? I will say a game called Hypnospace Outlaw. It's a sort of a visual novel slash faux internet simulator game. It's a fascinating narrative based game. It's hilarious. It is poignant. And it is like incredibly well constructed. So you play as a content moderator in a fictional GeoCities-esque internet service that you access when you go to sleep. So users like put on a headset and like they see this like alternate like internet world. Like it's like a retro internet, like an internet that never was kind of thing. And you play a content moderator who has to go around finding illegal and banned content on the service. But the thing is, as you ban different content, it affects the users and it affects the community. And it is the rare game. I almost never seen it before. You know, so many games are about like a hero's journey, right? It's like what can I do? And this game is about how what you do affects a whole community of people, of users. And it's really fascinating and well done. And I'm just, I know something is really good. I know the things I love the best tend to be things that I wish I had made. Like Hypnospace Outlaw is the game I wish I had made. Like it's so good that I'm absolutely jealous of it. So that's my favorite. And I strongly recommend people try that one out. And then in terms of like my favorite genres, okay, it's an interesting question. I have to give you a couple. I can't give you like one favorite.
Top three.
I tend to. Okay, all right. Let's do top three. I'll say. Deck builders for sure. I absolutely will love to sink my time into a deck builder, and feel like I'm very smart for building a very good deck of whatever it is, cards or puzzles or whatever, cards or dice, whatever. I'll say visual novels. Anything now, I take that with like I tend to like weird visual novels. Not like the typical like otome sort of like dating sim type game. I tend to like Western visual novels that are like weird, that like indie weird ones. That like the last one I played was called Raptor Boyfriend, where I loved it. Where it's like the '90s in Canada, and you move to a town full of cryptids, and you decide like which of three cryptids you want to date, and it's like very much it's sort of patterned after like Daria or like it's like satirical and funny and really well done. So I like weird visual novels, absolutely. And then I also like turn off your brain puzzle games. I like a little like it's like a little like it's just like, oh yeah, it's just like they'll just sink my teeth into like, like my first, like the classic being like something like Tetris, but like also ones like there's this one, I think it's called Metro, where you are like designing like a metro subway system by like moving lines to like from one to another, like from one station to another. You just build a little metro station. It's a like really simple, like lightweight, but like deep puzzle games. I tend to like those. So I would say that's a good span of what I tend to play. But I also love I mean, within visual novels, I consider like adventure games to be part of that. So like point and click like adventure games like are basically visual novels with a slightly different interface. So
Definitely.
I
Mhm.
like those,
Hmm.
So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, that's fantastic. Real quick, because we only got a few minutes left. Jabin, real quick, go over your favorite game and favorite 3 genres, just real quick, and then I'll go over mine, and we'll go ahead and end it there. But I just want to get all of our takes to see how kind of different tastes that we have, and maybe some suggestions we can all play.
So my favorite game of all time, I keep saying it all the time. It's an old game, probably one of the best soundtracks, and also one of my favorite, actually all my favorite bundle of villains in the game, Mega Man 2. It's
Oh
so
hell
it's
yeah.
so good. Me and my dad would always play it, when he was younger, and he would like know all the secrets and all, and his brother would do it to my uncle. But it's so funny because once dad had me, and then my uncle had my cousin, he taught. Oh my god,
For those just listening, he just brought out a Mega Man figure. That was awesome.
dude, you don't understand. I'm
A
there to get right now.
huge Mega Man fan
Me
myself. So
too. Me too.
yeah.
But it's so funny because my dad and my uncle would play Mega Man 2 in different ways. So, for example, my uncle would start off with Metal Man, and my dad would start off with Airman, because once you start off with the Airman, you get item 2, and all that stuff. So it's funny seeing. So now me and my cousin play differently. We argue how the right way to play is, and we both try to like prove ourselves. It's like, but while we're like playing, we're bumping to the music. Like, man, this shouldn't be this hard. So I feel like the whole experience is just fun, and it gives me pure enjoyment just because I was trained a lot under that game. In terms of genres, shoot. I have to put shooter in there, but I only like shooters if there's like a bigger lore to it. Like I don't just want to like jump in well, I do it every once in a while, but I don't just jump in a Call of Duty just because I just want to shoot some people. Like that's why it's a hot take, but this is why I like playing Fortnite, because it has a whole bigger lore of a story, and it drags on within each season, and that's what entices me. Like I like to earn what I'm doing, and in Fortnite is a crazy story, like resetting every 20 minutes. That's nuts. Um, and I'll have to put in RPG. It's so fun. It's so fun just escaping into those kinds of games. Most definitely, that's what I mostly download. And I would have to say simulators, like Minecraft being a heavy one. um just I can like mod it or do anything that I like ultimately creatively want to do on there, or I can just build a beach house real quick and kind of just let my mind go, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think those are probably my top three. Garrett, your turn. I'm sorry, I probably
Awesome.
took too much time.
No, you're good. We got a few minutes left. So my favorite game
All
of
right.
all time, and this is a lot of because of nostalgia, but also because of I had never been introduced to it, is Fallout 3. And the reason that game is my all-time favorite is because it was my first open world game ever. I had only played like Lego games and like the 007 on PS2, that kind of stuff. So I just gotten an
Yeah.
Xbox 360, and a friend of mine had lent me Fallout 3, and I got into it, and I was like, oh, this is, and I mean, it has a pretty good story. I mean, trying to like find your dad, getting out of the vault. But once I got out of the vault, I was like, oh, so now I just go to this town and, find out where my dad went. And then I looked to the left, and I was like, wait, nothing is stopping me from going left. What's over here? And so I would just go off and find side quests, and I was like, there is a different person that gives you a different quest like every mile of this game that you walk, and has a giant map. And it just blew my mind when I was like 14 how expansive a game could be. That's the first time I realized that a game could be more than just one story. And so that's absolutely my favorite game of all time. Favorite genres: open world RPGs for obvious reasons. I would have to say any kind of turn-based combat. So I enjoyed the XCOM games when I was younger. Even that includes like card games and stuff like that, deck building games. The last one I would probably have to say is, oh man. Even though I said they frustrate me,
that was hard for me too.
Even though I say they frustrate me, I gotta go with build your own story games, which is probably why I'm gonna play your game after this.
No, Geoffrey, you don't understand. We had a whole Geoffrey, we had a whole argument about this, and I was really trying to entice him why these are like genius. He was like, yeah, but I'm not really sure. So thank you for persuading him. Now he's gonna play way more. Thank you.
Oh, amazing! We turned you over. That's great.
You did. Yeah, I have converted.
There's a great zine on itch.io called Choice Beat. And it covers like a vast array of interactive fiction, visual novel type games, and you can discover a lot of really good stuff in that zine. So worth checking out if you're interested in the genre for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely be checking that out. But I think unfortunately we are out of time. There's going to be a bit of a shorter episode from what we are used to, but Geoffrey's on a very tight schedule with game design, so we do not want to take up any more of his time. But we are super grateful that you agreed to come on our podcast here. As you know, we're a bit of a newer podcast channel, but we are having so much fun. I mean, getting each other's ideas, getting other people's ideas, and life experiences with gaming and comics and whatever else might come up. So we very much appreciate you coming on this podcast. Any final words that you'd like to say before we end here?
Only that if you can find me at adventuresnack.com. That's as it says, my newsletter, and I send out new games twice a month. And if you're interested in Mega Man 2, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a novelization of Mega Man 2 that came out. In the 1980s. It's called Worlds of Power, Mega Man 2. You could probably get it on eBay pretty cheap. It's like a children's book. It's like a chapter book adaptation of Mega Man 2. And
no way.
It exists. And not only that, but it includes like game tips like built in, like written into
the
my
prose. God.
So it's like
you don't understand. Oh my god.
Yeah, I think that would probably blow your mind. I am a big Mega Man fan myself.
Okay, great. Because I even grew up watching the Bad series. Like,
yeah, I did too. I totally did too. Two Bad series, because there's also Captain N, the video game master.
Oh, there. See, that's right.
A nightmare version of Mega Man. Mega weird. Okay, folks, I gotta get going. Thank you both so much for having me. This was a blast.
Absolutely. So thank you everyone so much for watching, and all the links to Adventure Snack and everything else will be down in the description. Again, thank you so much, Geoffrey, for coming on. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see all of you guys next time. Bye, guys.
See you later.